All right. Thank you for joining us. Let me start and let's begin with education funding. I was just talking with the House Speaker, and there seems to be some question next week what might happen in terms of repealing these spending caps, thresholds, whatever, however you describe them. You're a Republican. Where's the Republican Party?
The Republican Party in general is for holding strong on the caps. I think people are calling for some kind of control on spending. Not all Republicans feel that way. I've heard a lot in our committee and reached out to people in my towns, and I think for some areas it makes sense that they have caps and they're spending too much, and other areas are trying to control costs and they're just going up. And I think to stay under the caps, people will defer important maintenance, replacing a roof, that'll end up costing them more later. So I'm really not sure the caps are the way to go. I really don't have a strong opinion either way on them. One thing I do have a strong opinion on is an amendment that I was going to put on this bill that's coming up on the threshold, and I'm told it's not going to be germane. So it'll be on the next education bill, and that's controlling unfunded education mandates. I put that amendment on a number of bills over the last year and a half, and it passed the House. And what it calls for is that every education bill that we pass here that has a cost associated with it will be paid for out of the state's general fund and not borne on the backs of property taxpayers. And that's passed the House every time, almost unanimously, and then nothing happens to it in the Senate. So it's going to go early this year, and I'm hoping that to call out on people to reach out to their senators and ask them to support it. And hopefully through the media, we'll get help with that, because the public supports that, the Senate should. So that will help controlling costs going forward. People come up with great ideas here, pre-K, dual enrollment. There's been a number of bills that have significantly increased costs on schools.
So these spending thresholds, you feel the concerns that have been raised about them are legitimate?
I think they're valid. In a lot of cases, they're valid. We heard from the School Board Association and said that they wish that we focused more on the staff-student ratio, and did something to impose limits on that. Well, the caps do that, right? Because it gives the school districts a little more flexibility, and they can look to maybe cut down on their staff or cut programs or do something else. I think the caps give the schools more flexibility than if we actually went in there and told them how many teachers they could have per student, or students they could have per teacher. So it gives them some more flexibility. But like I said, I think there's some towns that can't control. If you have significant special ed increases, we had a family move into our town who did great work with foster children. We had about 12 foster children, and that was a huge expense for our school. And I think they were doing great work, and our school did was great for those students back when. But that spiked costs. So I'm not sure that the thresholds fit for everybody.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds as though really what happened here is that it was an attempt to try to make something that may not really apply to every individual situation.
Right. What I've offered.
But what do you do then?
Okay.
Do you throw the thing out and try to regroup and redo it, or make people pay for maybe the mistake that was made last year?
Or maybe right for the moment, you reach a middle ground. Instead of taxing them double, you tax them at 50%. It's $2 for every dollar over. Maybe you do it at a 50% level. But I've offered up the idea in the past, and with some interest, in getting some budget analysts, some specialists at the state level, that if your budget exceeds the threshold, that you have access to this person from the state. And they come in and they take a look at your budget. And what they can do is bring best practices. We had a great principal who had been a businessman before, and he had great ideas for a school to help control costs. But that never got carried out beyond your school budget. But if you have state analysts that come in, take a look at your budget, they can bring you some ideas that other schools have done, creative ideas. And if they find that indeed you can't control those costs, it's beyond your control, you get a waiver. And have those people here at the state, through the Department of Education, Agency of Ed, that can do that and help the schools rather than just treat them with a sledgehammer and ding them with this. So I would support that. And certainly we'll have money with this excess spending. There would be money to fund those positions.
Do you think there's a lot of support within the Republican Party for this sort of compromise increase in the threshold position?
I don't work very, very closely with the Republican caucus, so you would have to talk to Don Turner about that.
Okay. What's your sense? What's your gut feeling?
No, my gut feeling is, I don't speak for the caucus, and
Understood.
I don't always go along
Yeah.
with the caucus, but my gut is they're standing strong on sticking with the thresholds as they are.
Okay. Is that how is there how political an element is there to it?
I think they're responding to the fact that the people in the towns are calling for control of costs. And it's true, we can't sustain the spending that we're seeing. And that's the best that Republicans can see that we can do for the people right now.
Mm-hmm. Next week, the governor's going to lay out his budget. What are you looking for? What do you expect?
I have no idea. I'm not in the inner sanctum there. I don't know what he's doing. I'm only working on what I'm working on.
What do you want to see?
What I want to see is I want to see controlled spending. I want to figure out how we can keep control of our spending at the state level. I'd like the conversation to be with the media when we talk about cuts to budgets in state government. We're not really talking about cuts. We're talking about cuts off of increases.
Right.
You know, the Agency of Human Services comes in and they say we need a 7% increase. And appropriations passes a 4% increase, and they look at that and say they cut our budget by 3%. That's not what happened. It went up. It actually went up 3%. And that conversation needs to be honest and clear to the public. And we need the media to help us with that. It's frustrating seeing that time over time when it's reported on television that there's a 6% cut to agency, but actually there continues to be increases. But having said that, there are significant cost drivers in the state. The opiate epidemic is more than a crisis. That is sucking us dry. That's taking corrections, human services, DCF, the courts. What that's doing to us, the healthcare, it is epidemic proportions. And I don't think it's rising to a level that the public is concerned, but they're not aware of how horribly bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on a judicial nominating board, and we met with a lot of attorneys over the last few months for openings for judges, and we had lawyer after lawyer come in and talk to us about it. And one was really impassioned and said every day families are being torn apart in the state. The abuses that are done to children because of this defy your imagination. The horrors that children are experiencing every day. And these are kids that they haven't hit the school system yet. This is going to drive costs everywhere. So I would hope, and the governor's talked about this before, I don't know how we fix it. Erica Marthage, who's the state's attorney in Bennington County, said if you could give her a blank check, she doesn't know how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to assess how we're dealing with treatment. I don't think it's effective, what we're doing right now. There's wait lists. I think everything needs to be reassessed and the money needs to be spent wisely. And I would hope that a good portion of what we talk about will deal with opiate.
Because when you talk about that impact on kids, then you're talking about like a whole another generation from now of all of those problems too.
The amount of children being born addicted to drugs right now is huge. So you take those kids, their detox, those infants, and now they've got the environment, they've got the genetics, and the struggles that they have because they were born with it. It's awful. It's awful. And the Medicaid costs. We're working on a bill now with some people I've met this morning with LARCs. Have you heard of LARCs? Long-acting reversible contraceptives. There was a pilot program done in Colorado that was hugely successful in offering up these to women, young women, and it's decreased abortion rate, it's decreased the unwanted pregnancy rate. It would be huge help to women that are in treatment, and you can get either implants or IUDs, and Erica Marthage talked about the fact that while women they're in the process of having their parental rights terminated, they're coming back in to court pregnant again. And we need to help women get back on their feet, and that would be one area that we could do that would help make a difference. We need to stem the flow of these children coming into the system.
How would that work? How would women get that? I mean, would they be? How would the program work?
Okay, so there's right now in our budget adjustment, there's something to address that. Lawrence Miller took a look and has requested a change where women who have just given birth, what they do is under Medicaid, they'd have to come back to a doctor's office to receive this type of birth control. But what this would do is right after they've given birth, they can have that birth control offered to them while they're still in the hospital. That'll be a big difference. Of course, the baby's just been born. Other ways, there's money through a program called the Access Program that you can use to help subsidize this birth control, so that doctors and offices will encourage women rather than birth control pills. This is something that they can use.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a little on it. You sort of implant it here and it lasts for
5 years or so.
Yeah.
And if
And this would
anybody
all be
looks up-
voluntary.
Oh, absolutely voluntary. It's a broadening availability. And if you look at what was done in Colorado, it was 7 years. There was money given to a private organization. They decreased those rates, as I said, over 40%.
Wow.
It's hugely successful.
Wow.
And there's a track record of it. I had read about it, and then I spoke with Erica Marthage about it, who has so much experience down in Bennington, and she's a huge supporter of it. So anything she can do to help spread that, whether through counseling, when women go for counseling, in the Suboxone clinics, that is offered to them, that they see that it's available, and it absolutely is voluntary. But what we're seeing done, the wait list for, and I was told, I'm trying to track it down here, that the treatment, the Suboxone treatment was a 30-day program, but they cut it down to 15 days. I don't know if that's true. I'm trying to see, because a friend of mine that does this counseling said that's not enough time. We've heard about people with Suboxone renting it. Have you heard of this?
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they're given their dosages, and then they have to bring it back to show they haven't sold it. But what they're doing is they're getting more than they need, then they sell it, and then when they come back for their treatment, they actually rent Suboxone and bring it in to show that they still have some.
Wow.
So there's a lot of abuse of the system. We have to make sure it's effective.
Wow.
So I'm hoping he addresses that.
Marijuana legislation, you in favor of that or not?
I've got questions about it. I actually have more questions than I was more supportive, and issues were raised that I have questions around. If those questions were addressed.
What came up?
The DUI issue, how we're going to deal with driving under the influence particularly. That's one. I don't believe that we're going to address the edibles. But that
What does that mean, address the
address the edibles? The fact that, that edible marijuana, that there are problems with that around the concentrations and how much there is, and if it's in candies, that's a lot of people. I've been told that we wouldn't be looking at doing any kind of edibles in Vermont. So it was mostly around the DUI and the banking, problems that they've dealt with in other states. And I just think we're going to run out of time. I think this bill could theoretically hit every different committee. It affects every committee in this building, and I'm not sure that we have the time.
What would you say was a priority or two that would replace that?
What would be a priority is continuing priority, the Medicaid deficit, still working on Vermont Health Connector. I haven't been able to pay my bill in 3 months. So,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
So the system is still struggling, and I admire the people that are working on it. They're very responsive. Whenever I have a constituent with a problem, they get help right away, but they know to contact me, and I get them the help. I haven't asked for the help for myself because I just want to see what it's like struggling through the system. What we were able to get through last year, I worked really hard on, was the direct enroll piece, so people can now actually go directly to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm told it's seamless when they do that. I could pick up the phone and do that, but I want to experience what the general public is experiencing, and it's been 3 months, and I believe at 3 months, I'm not sure I have insurance right now. I'm just talking. I finally called Lawrence yesterday and said what I'm struggling with. So we still have to focus on fixing Vermont Health Connect. We have to deal with the property taxes. Those are the two biggies, I think. It's the healthcare and property taxes.
Global Foundries getting $1 million. You in favor of that? Not in favor of that?
I am not in favor of that. I was part of the group that signed on to a letter, and so that's
50
hold off
people,
on it.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Chris Pearson brought. Yeah. I think it would have been wiser to hold off. Then I was told that they'd already made that commitment of the $1 million. Had they made it, then yes, they should have. But no, I wasn't supportive of that.
Why?
I'm not convinced that that was money that they needed in order to stay here. I think they would have stayed here anyway, or I'm not sure how long they're going to stay after you give them $1 million. It just doesn't seem like the wisest to me personally. But I'm not on economic development. I wasn't part of, private conversations that were had. So just generally speaking, from my level of knowledge, I'm not supportive of it. Doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea, just from what I know. One thing I want to just speak before I'm done is working on, with the group, with the treasurer, on refinancing student loans, which I'm really excited about. I'm hoping that gets a lot of traction. People in my committee, Ways and Means, are interested in that, and a way that we could cut down on the percentage rate for existing student loans for Vermont young people. And the treasurer has some ideas on to work on that. So that's something that I'm hoping we get traction on this year.
Tell me more about that, because a lot of the loans are federal. And,
Yes,
obviously
it's at a
DSAP
level,
too.
we haven't re-met. We met once, and Beth Pierce spoke about there's money available, and it was at a level that was way above
Okay.
my knowledge. She's very heady on these things, so I realize I need a group of people, people who have more experience, and we're going to be sitting down with an attorney, but I'm hoping to facilitate that and get everybody moving in a direction. And when I spoke about it in Ways and Means, everybody, I think I don't know anybody, as long as there's a way to do it, structure it, that doesn't support doing that. But I'll have more information on that going forward.
Last question. Last Thursday, I was at the Donald Trump event. Didn't see you there, Patty.
No, I was not.
How come? You a fan of Donald Trump or not?
Not a big fan.
Why?
Baiting me, aren't you?
I'm just
No, I'm
curious.
appalled by Donald Trump. I'm horrified by Donald Trump. I've spoken out since fairly early. I ignored him at first because you feel like you're giving oxygen to something that doesn't even warrant that. As he's grown, I'm more horrified by the amount of support he's getting, and I think he's dangerous. He's irresponsible. I think he's a real threat, and he does not speak for Republicans, for most Republicans. He speaks to an angry subset of the population, and indeed, they're not all Republicans. And it's very disturbing to me how he just continues to gain momentum. And no, I think he's a misogynist, bigot, racist, hate monger. No, I wasn't there last week.
How do you stop somebody like him?
By speaking to people respectfully, I think it's a disenfranchised group, right? It's interesting because people say it's the Bernie, there's also the people that support Bernie, there's the same type in that they feel disenfranchised. And I think by having to see through their frustration to what he's actually saying, and I have talked to some people, and I think turn them around by being respectful and saying, listen to it. They said, well, all politicians lie. Okay, but he's lying also, just coming from a different
Right.
place. So he's not speaking the truth. He's not speaking from things he can actually do. And he's just hate mongering, and he's building on fears and prejudices of people and frustrations. And so I think hopefully in the end people will see that and realize he can't win and he shouldn't win. And it would be a scary place. The world would be a very scary place with Donald Trump leading us.
Didn't you think he would be done by now?
Yeah, doesn't everybody think he would have been done by now? People have different theories, and I've heard them, and most people are scratching their heads and can't figure it out. And I don't know.
Yeah. Thanks for your time.
Thank
Appreciate
you very
it.
much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Have fun today.
Thank you.